How's the soul? I'm your host, Chris Bogue, and this is my show on LinkedIn Live, where I have conversations with cool people who will help you work more creatively. Today, my guest is Maiva Cifuentes. Maiva, welcome to the show. Please tell the audience who you are and where they can find you on the internet.
Totally. Well, first of all, Chris, I didn't know that you were a musician. So you're always surprising me with new things here. That was a great little tune. So yes, I'm Maiva Cifuentes. I am the founder and CEO of Flying Cat Marketing. We're an SEO and content marketing agency for B2B SaaS companies. They can find me on the internet on LinkedIn. That's pretty much it. On my website, of course, flyingcatmarketing.com, but I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, love connecting with other cool people and getting creative. So thanks for having me here. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. Today's episode is called Don't Overthink It. So we're going to be talking about improv. Real quick, if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Bogue, and this is my show. So this is a show about monetizing creativity. I am an entrepreneur and writer and video coach, and also a sketch comedian coming to you from Chicago. So you can find all my coaching and digital products at chrisbogue.io. But the easiest way to follow me is to go on LinkedIn and ring my bell. So I'm a content creator. I post new content every day, much of it comedic, much of it about video and sales and marketing. And I want to hear from you today. So hello to everybody in the audience. I see Wendy. I see Tanya. I see Noelle. I see Abdul. If you are in the comments, please jump in. Say hi. Tell us you're posting. Otherwise, we don't know you're here. And if you've got any questions for me or Maiva about marketing or comedy or LinkedIn, just throw them into the comments and we're going to try to answer all of them by the end of the show. Real quick before we start too, we also have sponsors for today's episode. So today's episode is sponsored by Allego. So Allego is an all-in-one sales enablement training platform. Everything you need for your team for training, conversational intelligence, content distribution is all in one convenient place. And also by Enable Minutes, super short, awesome video content. They are going to be our sponsors. We're going to hear from them during the Gimme Gimme section in the middle of today's episode. Let's get it started. So, Maiva, can you just tell the audience, just very briefly, how did you start Flying Cat Marketing? What was the process like to start your own marketing agency?
Oh man. So I started Flying Cat Marketing about 3 years ago and I was freelancing my whole career before that. And I just realized I would like the business part of it. I do, of course, I loved doing SEO and content, but I prefer building a business and learning new things. So building the agency it still is quite a challenge. The process was basically finding people, figuring out the process, and then figuring out how to get more clients and specialize and serve them well so they stay on. The funny thing, actually, when you ask, because when we were first talking earlier, I mentioned that I haven't used improv that much for marketing, but now when you're asking me when I started the agency, I actually remember I used to do these funny videos where I would get Snapchat where they had the different filters that change your voice as well. And they had these like little baby faces. And I had made a whole character out of her, just a lot of videos of her trying to figure out LinkedIn and her like just being kind of dumb and like taking everything really literally. And that was a lot of fun, but then they removed that filter. So I lost my character and I was quite sad about that. So I didn't continue doing that. But I started, one of the big ways that I started connecting with people when I was pretty much a nobody was starting a podcast, like a video series, and reaching out to them to have them as guests and just talking to them. It was my way of networking because before it was pretty challenging to get on calls with people when nobody knows who you are. There's so much to say about building the agency, but that's not what we're here to talk about today.
Well, I just wanted to start there because improv is something that I've done. You're a guest on the show today because it's you do it too. And for me, it was one of those things where like it changed my entire mindset about everything. Like I firmly believe once you learn the rules of improvisation, once you learn how to create something out of nothing with complete strangers, that just like bleeds over into like every part of your life. So
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit like how did you get into improv? What was the first time? Like, what was that like getting into it? And what were you like when you started improv?
Right. So I started improv about at the end of 2019. I did a whole year just on Zoom. So I started at the end of 2019, and I was just looking for somewhere to meet people and be social and have fun. Like I wasn't looking to become an actor, and I also wasn't necessarily looking to learn how to be funny or anything. I just wanted something fun to do. Um, and I thought at the time I wasn't that funny of a person, but that it would be fun anyway. I don't really get so nervous. I was very nervous before the first time that we performed, but I don't really get that nervous. I feel mostly confident, a lot more confident now that I've been doing it for a while. Um,
What changed? Like, how do you know? Like, was there a point where you kind of crossed that Rubicon where it's like, oh, you know what? I don't really care anymore about like I'm not getting so nervous about the possibility of them not laughing. Like, what did it take to get you to that point?
yeah, so I kind of realized that that the people that you're on the stage with have your back. So that's the
Yes.
most important thing is they have your back. So if you're sitting there like, oh God, I don't know what to say, somebody else gifts you something, and then all you have to do is react to it. So you say, oh yes, oh thank you for that thing, you've just given me a gift, and now all I have to do is react. And yeah, you add something on, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a funny thing. I think when I started I was just frozen, like what's something witty I can say, or how can I be so clever right now? And really all I had to do was present anything, a relationship, a place, an action that I'm doing, and then the other person takes that and they react, and then we kind of build on top of it, and then it can become a funny situation because it just gets a little bit silly because it doesn't go where you expect it to. And I just remember after a couple times performing where I had really strong ideas that I thought were going to be amazing, and I was thinking them through, and I was like, okay, this is going to be so good. I'm going to have this character, I'm going to have this accent, I'm going to be in this situation, and then somebody comes on and speaks before I do, and they endow me with a character that in a situation that has nothing to do with what I had in my head. So I'm just like, oh shit, that's not what I had planned. But then I just kind of went with it, and it ended up being a lot funnier. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I had done that other thing. We did something totally different, and it ended up being really fun and really funny. And I think one big turning point was just allowing myself to have fun instead of trying to make it into something else.
Yeah, I think so much of it is like you're not thinking about the destination so much as like once you free yourself of like you don't have to know where it's going, it really frees you up like to do anything, you know. And
Yeah.
I learned, you know, the first lesson I ever learned in improv was make your partner look good, and yes, and your partner and support your partner, and that is a huge first step. And it is empowering to know that no matter what you do, the other people on stage, they're not going to try to sell you out and make you look stupid. So they look like they're there to try to make you look good.
Yeah.
But once I got a little deeper into improv, I really learned that the strongest gift you can give another person is arming yourself with a strong point of view.
Yes.
And I
A
feel like
unique
this
point
is
of view.
definite one thing that like this that's a huge overlap between marketing and improv is like you do not know exactly what's on your audience's mind. You're not going to be able to communicate all the complexity of everything you know to them at all times. But if you come in with a point of view that's real, either they're going to be into it or not, you know. And if they're into it, you're good. You just got to like stay true to your point of view. And that's what I found in a scene too. You know, if I'm dad and I got woken up and I'm angry because I got woken up from my nap, it doesn't really matter what happens in the scene,
Yeah.
and I might even drop that, depending on what's going on. But it's like I started with something. I knew who I was. I had a feeling about the scene. And if somebody comes in there and they're like, Mr. President, but okay, well, now they just made me the president. I'm just going to go off their energy. But yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about, like, were you doing like short form improv? Were you doing like long form improv? Like, what was your crew like?
Yes. So I've always, except for initially we did some short form games, but most of the time I've been doing improv has been long form. So we did like the Herald, free form. We did something called Game, which is just this, like finding a unique point of view or like an unusual point of view, getting somebody to have an unusual point of view. So first you're setting the platform. Where are we? What are we doing? What's our relationship? And then somebody's going to have a really strange point of view. And then everybody else is kind of reacting to it. So that was a whole kind of long form that we did. And just recently I joined the cast of this because I've always just been a student. So just this month, actually, I joined a cast called Typical Adult Behavior here in Barcelona. And that's like half of it is short form games, which I do struggle with because it's just a lot faster thinking. I like long form because I have time to develop the character and react. And short form is a little trickier, but I'm having fun playing with it anyway. What are you used to doing?
I've done so many different types of performance. I was doing improv when I was in 6th grade. My friends and I were in Boy Scouts, and we would play all the Whose Line Is It Anyway games, at the closing campfire of summer camp or whatever. And I was also experimenting with writing sketch comedy and stuff. I watched too much TV. I watched a lot of SNL and The Simpsons and Conan O'Brien, and I wanted to be them, so I was just doing it. Then when I got into college, yeah, I actually did, and in my 20s too, I did a mix where it was half short form and half long form with a little bit of sketch comedy sprinkled in, before I started doing full-length sketch comedy shows, which oftentimes I was writing and directing. I was not in the cast. I was writing for other people. But I'm asking you about this, and this is something I really want to stress to my audience. If anybody's listening to Maiva, if anybody ever watches my content and is like, oh, it might be fun to do improv or like take a sketch comedy class or just put video content out there, it is easier to do it with other people. I say, if you're not feeling creative, if you have writer's block, if you're trying to put stuff out but you can't hit publish, go be a student somewhere. Go take a class. There's a reason why Tina Fey and Amy Poehler do everything together. It's because they learned together. They were doing shows at Improv Olympic in Chicago together, and the people you learn with tend to be the people you stick with. I see Jared Mason here in the comments. Jared Mason, he's been on the show before. He's spitballing what the president could be doing. He's been in shows, I've cast him in stuff, and those relationships stick around. I like this from Kieran here. What about all the people you might lose with your strong viewpoint? Boo-hoo. Exactly, Kieran. There are too many people in the world. You do not have the ability to make all of them happy.
Yeah, I think it's good to repel people with your strong viewpoint, because then you're going to be attracting the right kind of people.
Yeah, they're doing you a favor. In sales, we call that disqualifying your prospect. If somebody doesn't have a fit for what you're selling, or they don't have the budget, or they're not going to buy it. So the whole goal in business is to not do business, not even start with those people in the first place. You find the people you're aligned with, and you deliver what you can deliver. And yeah, I for me, it's just working with other people, growing with other people. I don't know. That's been huge to me. So what would you say, like, you're talking about long form improv, and for anybody, in the audience who doesn't know, long form improv is typically like, it's a group of improvisers. You typically get one suggestion from the audience, and then you just go for like 20 to 40 minutes. So sometimes there's an idea generator. The players will do some monologues to kind of generate some ideas. But then you just go. You're making scenes, you're creating characters, and usually it ends up kind of forming some sort of a storyline. So can you tell me, like, once you got into this, once you got comfortable, I don't have to get a laugh every minute. I can take the time to develop a character. How did that, like, transform your thinking in, like, business and the way you interact with people outside of the improv world?
So it's made a huge, huge impact on my business, I think, and how I'm dealing with people. Just the idea that I mean, I don't know about the long form specifically, because that's just what I've been doing most of the time in improv. I think just improv, the concept of everything is going to be okay. Um, be confident about what you're saying. There's a lot of games where it's like you could be saying complete nonsense and the audience will believe it if you say it with confidence. And I'm not saying, lie or anything, but just say, like, people can't tell that you're nervous or that you have imposter syndrome, or just say what you have to say with confidence, and it's a lot easier for people to take it in and to believe it. It's also taught me a lot of the yes and. I've just added it into my company core values. Like, yes and things. And then people kind of confused it at first of like, oh, does that mean I have to say yes to everything? And I say, no, it doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. It means that you are listening to the other person's perspective. So if you're saying yes, but, that basically means I didn't listen to anything that you just said. It means I actually don't care what you have to say. And if you're using yes and, it means yes, I'm listening to you. And in order to say and to add something and to contribute to it, you have to have really closely listened to what the person told you, because you can't contribute to it in a way that makes sense and continues the storyline if you haven't closely listened. So that's a big thing. And also, it's taught me a lot about just listening to people, looking them in the eyes, like getting a vibe for it, getting out of my own head. That was a huge thing, because in improv, even though you're thinking a lot, I feel like you can't really be in your own head, because you have to be connecting with the other person in order to be able to move things forward, because otherwise you're just kind of in your own world and it's not going to connect the scene together if you're in your own head and not with the person that's there. So all of these things together have really improved my life, and I think contribute a lot to the success of the business. There's probably a bunch of other stuff that I haven't said either. Haven't thought of.
Let's go a little deeper on yes and here, because audience, I don't know if any of you, like, who here has tried improv. If you have tried improv, please let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear about what type of improv you've done. It sounds really simple, this concept of yes and, right? You say yes and you add one thing onto it. But most of the time when people start, it ends up being yes, but, no, although. It really is kind of an unnatural thing. And I find a lot of sales training is counter to this. And like, here's one exercise. I don't know if anyone in the audience likes this. Maiva, I don't even know if you love this tactic. One thing that my sales bosses loved that I hated was the feel, felt, found framework for when
I'm unfamiliar with it.
So what it is somebody brings up an objection and they're like, hey, you're too expensive. And you go, hey, you know what? I completely understand why you feel that way. This other client that I had felt that way. And what they found was that actually the value they got was blah, blah, blah. And I never liked this framework, because I never want to tell people that what they're feeling is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, my thing is like, it's that yes and mentality of, look, maybe I don't agree with what this person said, but this is where they're at. So the goal of improv is always just to keep the scene moving forward. How do we not let the action drop? How do we keep going to the next place? So my instinct in that section is like, I don't know, talk to them about like what they think is, like, what isn't expensive, what is a good value to them, and it's like, okay, they said that, what's the next move from there? Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to guarantee that this is going to close, but if you just accept what people say and you go, oh, okay, go on. They're expecting a fight or something. They're expecting for you to tell them that you're wrong. And I don't know, there's just something disarming about teaming up with people. And like you said, when people know that you're not going to try to make them look stupid, when they know that whatever they say, you're going to accept it, they just treat you differently.
Definitely. And I think that, it's different than just saying yes. Because if you're just like, okay, that's how you feel, and then you don't add anything to it, then still it's not going anywhere. But what you're saying now, just like, I accept how you feel and I'm inviting you to say more, it's really similar to, Chris Voss's negotiation techniques, his mirroring and his labeling. I feel like that's a format of yes anding. If I'm saying, you know what, I'm really uncomfortable being on this show with you today, Chris, and then you would say uncomfortable, that's yes anding, because you're acknowledging what I said, because you've listened really hard. And then with that format of question, you're inviting me to continue and then add. I guess you didn't really and it.
Well, no, I
But
was going to say, Mila, I know, listen, I know you feel uncomfortable right now, but I had Robbie Crabtree on the show last week, and what he found was that actually I don't make him uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Any questions?
Thank you for that.
It's like you really, what you have to do is be like, oh, my guest is uncomfortable. You react to that. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, apologize or try to do something to make them feel more comfortable. Or, it's like there's an infinite.
I'm not uncomfortable, by the way.
Oh no, I just thought it was so funny just to be given a gift like that and be like, no, really, if you think about how this other person felt, you probably don't feel that, and I do think, I don't know, we could get to this in the next topic too. I have this whole theory, and the reason why I bet on myself and why I started my own business is I think tactics like that work in situations where it's easier to constrain people.
What do you mean?
Ever since people work from home, even bosses can't control their people. Like before, like when I used to work in an office, if my boss wanted me to do something, they would just close the doors and we would have an all team meeting. And like, you're in a situation where even if you want to get up and go to the bathroom, you kind of like don't feel like you're allowed to.
Yeah.
And now it's so easy for anybody to ignore anybody, and like, if you don't make them feel seen, if they don't feel like they're part of what's happening, you're going to lose them. They're just not, they're going to go start checking their email or something.
You don't only lose them, but then you lose the audience. I guess they are the audience in this case. They're the audience and your partner if it's a sales conversation. But if it's marketing, like if you're not listening, if you're not engaging with whoever is in front of you in a way that you're actually listening to them at the same time and not just talking at them, then you also lose their interest.
Yeah, well, I think that is a great segment here. Talking about engaging content, I think it's time for Gimme Gimme. So, Maiva, are you ready for Gimme Gimme?
I'm ready.
All right. So, this is the part of the show where my guest and I like to address a common misconception about LinkedIn. Now, there's some crazy advice going around that LinkedIn is about friendship and about selflessly giving and never asking for anything in return. But that's just not true, folks. LinkedIn is actually the only social network that was invented for blatant self-promotion. That's right. It was designed for a place where you could post your accomplishments and your resume and possibly get a high-paying job. So every once in a while, my guest and I like to pop into character and let my audience know exactly what we want from them. So Maiva, are you ready for Gimme Gimme?
I'm ready.
All right. Hello. Get out of here. This is Boss Bogue. This is Gimme Gimme, the part of the show where I ask you for money. Maiva and I are going to ask you for a lot of money in just a moment. But first, let's give it up for today's sponsors. So first of all, our show today is sponsored by Allego. Folks, there's a lot of competition right now for sales enablement training. And unfortunately, most of your teams are being trained in 50 different places. All right. They've got to go to one app for the content. They've got to go to another app to listen to call recordings. They've got to go to another app to log it all. That's too much task switching. Okay. If you've ever worked with an SDR, you know the more they're switching tasks, the more difficult their job is going to be. You want one simple location where you can compile all your training materials from the best practices that are already happening within your team. So if you are checking out Gong or Chorus, go ahead and check out Allego instead. It is a much more convenient solution for any team out there that needs to do sales enablement training and needs to quickly get their team trained on the best practices. So check out Allego and also check out Enable Minutes. Funnily enough, if you're a person who wants to learn about sales enablement, it's complicated. But there are a great new show called Enable Minutes that's bringing amazing content every day. And Iggy, I'm pretty sure we have a clip from Enable Minutes. So can we just roll that Enable Minutes spot, please?
Look at all this sales enablement content I need to learn to do my job. I probably just won't do it.
Sound familiar? You need sales enablement training for your team, but most sales enablement content is long and shitty. That's why you need Enable Minutes.
What's that name?
Enable Minutes.
One more time.
Enable Minutes.
Oh, Enable Minutes. What's Enable Minutes?
Enable Minutes is expert advice from the top sellers on LinkedIn. Short, engaging video content to keep you up to date on all aspects of sales enablement.
My SDRs won't pick up the phone.
Enable Minutes.
I waste too much money on expensive programs for my tech stack.
Enable Minutes.
I want to be a better manager, but I'm kind of a toxic asshole.
Enable Minutes will, they'll do what they can.
Order in this court! The jury has reached their verdict. I sentence you to follow Enable Minutes by clicking the link in the description or scanning this QR code on the screen. I'm seriously gonna sit here until you do it. All right, it's an amazing program and sometimes I'm on it. Just take out your phone, switch it to camera mode, and scan the QR code. Wow, I just followed Enable Minutes and it was so easy. Ain't it the truth? This promo is adjourned.
All right, so follow Enable Minutes. You didn't get the message. Here it is again. We got a QR code on the screen there for you. Check it out, scan it. It is amazing content. You will see me there sometimes. Maiva, now's your chance. My audience is here. It's your turn to ask them for exactly what you want.
Hello. So I am Magic, Maiva, and I am a wizard and master of divination. And today I have my crystal ball. Where is it? Have you taken my crystal ball again? I was going to try to show everybody how they could forecast their SEO ROI, and I did have my handy crystal ball. But I have heard actually that some of these B2B marketers, people, they prefer this sorcery called data for divination or forecasting. They might call it. I must say I'm unfamiliar with this so-called data sorcery, but this warlock says it's pretty much the same as magic. So since I couldn't find my crystal ball, if these B2B marketers are planning to invest in SEO, in content, and they just want to see how much money is it going to actually make them, depending on how much they invest, then I do recommend they check out this SEO ROI forecasting spreadsheet that we have here at flyingcatmarketing.com. And one day this cat will return to me my crystal ball so I can return to that. And that is what I have to ask of you today.
Yeah, you better discipline that cat. That's not okay that your cat took your crystal ball. And you there at home better scan that QR code because I know your marketing team is not getting any returns on their SEOs. They do not know what they're doing, okay? You need to figure that out. You can't just guess on this stuff. Get the ROI calculator. There it is. Oh, and while we're at it, why don't you check out me too? Huh? Did you see that video that I made for Enable Minutes? Did you see that was the funniest sales enablement video anybody's ever posted on LinkedIn? That's nothing for me. All right? You think that's funny? I call that Wednesday. All right? That is a regular ass Wednesday because it is very, very easy for me to do this. All right? Mercifully short video content is what I specialize in. And if you act now, you can actually learn content with me. So next week, I am launching my 2 cohorts, one on Monday nights for sales video prospecting and one on Wednesday nights for video content. So it is a fun time. We are going to meet every week. We have different challenges. We learn about video. We give each other feedback and support. It is a good time, but slots are filling up. Okay, so we're going to run a spot for that in just a moment. Maiva, one last chance. Do you have anything else you want to ask the audience for?
Connect with me on LinkedIn.
Follow Maiva. I threw the bell, but follow her. She's super nice. She's super fun. Go send her a connection request. Go send me a connection request too. I'm friendly. I know I'm shouting at you, but I'm friendly. So check out Maiva. Anything else, Maiva?
That's it from me.
All right. Well, this has been Gimme, and looks like it didn't upload my video. So we'll watch the one for my course. So buy my course too. This has been Gimme.
Hello? Is this Mr. Sherbert? It sure is. What can I help you with, brother? Hello. You were not expecting this call. Do you have 17 seconds to learn about mercifully short... Is this a cold call? I don't know. You. Never call this number again.
Oh no! Another unsuccessful cold call. You probably don't have time to fuck off.
I got a quota to hit.
Are you spending hours every week cold calling and cold emailing but not seeing results?
There's gotta be a better way.
Introducing the complete guide to selling on video. Whether you're new to sales or a President's Club member, this fast and fun course will teach you to efficiently create short, customized videos that get results. The complete guide to selling on video is not sold in stores. Visit chrisbogue.io and use promo code GIMMEGIMME to take $50 off while supplies last. Don't delay. Get noticed today.
And we are back with Maiva Cifuentes. So, anybody at home who is just joining us, today's episode is called Don't Overthink It. We are getting deep on improv and how that's changed our lives and changed the way we work. So this is the part of the show. We're going to get a little bit deeper into some exercises that you can do at home or different ways you can start practicing improv and incorporating it into your own life. If you've not done so yet, jump into the comments. Let me know if there's a specific improv game you love to play or you love to watch, or if there's any exercises that's ever been helpful for you. We want to know about it. And Maiva, let's just start this off with are there any games or exercises or techniques that helped you learn improv and made you into the person you are today?
So there's a lot of warm up, like fun games that I think kind of get me into the headspace, like makes me think of. That's a really simple thing where
what's that?
It's just maybe one person starts telling a story. It's hard to do it by yourself, I have to say. But maybe
like idea generator, like you start a story that spawns another story.
Exactly. So I if you don't want to act in a scene yet or something, or you don't want to actually do acting, then one person starts saying, oh, I remember this time in my life where this and that happened. And then as soon as it makes you think of something else, you say, oh, that makes me think of when this happened in my life, blah, blah, blah. So you're actually just trying to associate ideas and just move really fast and not really think too hard about it. Sometimes you can say, sometimes we do it so somebody starts telling a story and then you go in and like recreate it in a scene that's already probably a little bit more advanced for people who are new to it. But I think just idea association, because that's the kind of thing in improv is you get kind of frozen. You're like, what do I think of? I can't think of anything. So it's just the practice of seeing one thing and making it remind you of something else that might not be related in any way. Even sometimes even the farther related they are, the better. But just how do you connect ideas of things? So that's one thing that I think is really helpful to warm me up.
Yeah, this is something I want the audience to understand too, where it's like, that's a very common way to start a long form improv show is you get a suggestion from the audience and then one by one, the players step forward and they just share a story about their life. And your cat is hilarious right now, by the way. But yeah,
I forgot to warn you, he was going to be very involved in the show.
Love it. But yeah, one of the things you learn in improv is this idea of specifics. Specific phrases are what the audience thinks is funny. In an improv scene, you don't go walk up to the bartender and say, I'll have a drink. You say, hey, I'll take a Dewar's neat, I'll take a PBR tall boy. Hey, I'll take a cranberry daiquiri, whatever it is, the more specific, the better, because 20 minutes later, it's like you're improvisers on a stage. You don't have any costumes. You don't have a setting or whatever. But if 20 minutes later I come back and I'm like, another cranberry daiquiri, please. You remember exactly who I am. the little details that pop out in your mind. That's the same thing with the story. You said you're doing where someone tells you a story and then you act it out as a scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, same idea, where it's like all you need is a handful of specific words that they used as they were telling the story. And just something about hearing those details come back at them.
Definitely.
It's funny,
I think
connecting things.
it's really interesting because there's this, when we were learning games, so platform and improv, for those who don't know, is just establishing what your relationship is, where you are, and what you're doing. And that already makes such a huge difference, because that's something that people don't do. And in beginning improv, they'll just start to have a conversation, but nobody knows who they are to each other, etc. So when we started trying to learn this, sorry, Buddy's like really up in my space right now. When we were trying to learn how to do platform, our teacher would just make us get really, really exaggerated. Like the first line go on for a minute about like my relationship to you. So I could be like, Chris, when I was at the printer the other day and you were just standing there making photocopies of every single picture that you took on vacation, and I'm standing here with a memo, and you know that I'm going to be late. You know that I have that meeting with Joseph later on today and that it's really, really important to my career. But Chris, you consistently show that you just don't care, but like just going on about, I guess you still don't really know who we are to each other, but just like rival coworkers or something, and we're at the office. And
it's a point of view. It's a point of view. You're exasperated at me. You're disappointed in me. I was always taught, and this is something I believe anybody in the audience who's listening here, an improv teacher once taught me, like, look, you have to say yes to the initiation. Like, it has to be real. But once you accept it as real, you can either lean into it or lean away from it. If the scene starts and I turn around and you're just glaring at me and you're just exasperated, I could fall all over myself trying to win you back. Or I could be like, do not even give that to me. And I can mirror you. And it does not matter which I do.
Yeah.
I could take either position. The scene could go in either ways. But you gotta pick one point of view and really commit to it. And again, who knows where that scene's gonna go? It does not matter. What matters is we have a connection to each other. Yeah. And I think this, and I don't know if you do this too. Maybe you could tell me a little bit more about the content you're making at Flying Cat Marketing. But I always tell my audience, especially when they're getting on video, I'm like, you need to have a relationship with your camera. How you talk to the camera. Like, I talk to the camera like it's my friend. I can goof around with my friend. I can be more serious and vulnerable with my friends. That is how I treat the camera. And when the audience sees me on LinkedIn or whatever, I'm bringing them into my world like I'm their friend. So it's like, are you there as a teacher? Are you there as an equal? Are you there as a peer? Mm-hmm. Are you there as a student? Like, no matter what it is, you have to know how you feel about the other person before you get 3 lines deep into the scene.
Yeah. And it's okay. Like you said, it doesn't matter how you feel. It's just decide. It's more important that you decide than what you decide.
Yeah. Let's, okay. So I like this. Matt here says, I was always a fan of freeze frame, where you have to start off from an audience source scenario, then you freeze another person, and then you tap them out. And it's this is a very physical game typically, because what happens is, someone's like, hammering or something, you can tap them out and then like, say, and now you're a doctor and now, but you're borrowing the last physical position that the scene was in. So Maiva, what do you think about freeze?
Oh, no, I really like that one. I mean, you do have to be really physical for it to be funny. So it's kind of funny because you have to find some kind of action that is, you can't just stand there and have a conversation because then it's not funny. But I think that's a fun, it reminds me, actually, last night I went to a jam and I saw a game that was it just reminded me of it when you were talking about it. But basically 2 people come in, there's 2 people outside of the room, and then there's 6 people total playing. So there's 2 people in performing and they do a whole scene and it has to be pretty physical. 2 people are watching it and they decide which character am I going to be next when we swap out. 2 people outside of the room. So then they finish the scene. The 2 people have been watching recreate exactly the same scene, but in total gibberish. Or we were like, do it in Italian. Nobody here spoke Italian. They're like, so like, nah. And so they recreate the same scene and they just have to translate it. And then the next 2 people who come in watch the scene in gibberish and then translate it back into English. And then you have to see how close it was to the original scene. It's actually not at all like Freeze, but it just made me think of it. I thought that was a pretty funny game.
Yeah, again, it's like you need something to play off of. One thing that, like, I think this is an interesting too, that seems to be a theme we're coming on here, is it's really not about the words. The words are like the smallest part of the equation. And ironically, that's the thing that holds people back, because they're like, oh, what am I going to say? How can I say something funny? But like you said, you were doing scenes in total gibberish. And it works, you know. And one game that I learned that I think is actually a great way to start with beginning improvisers. Have you ever played Numbers?
Yeah, where you just say 1 through 50.
Yeah, or I always got a number from the audience. You know, if they say 6, you go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, and you have this conversation, but there are no words. And yeah, what ends up happening is you really explore the emotion of the scene. You know,
yeah, the relationship a lot.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, and that's why I go so crazy about video, and why I'm so really believe in the future of like just people getting on video, is like you have all these storytelling gifts in your tone of voice, in your eyes, in your physicality, and how you move around. You know, you can say so much to the camera just with a look. And the more I do comedy, the more I'm writing comedy for companies, the more I'm coaching other creators how to do it, is like I'm doing less and less as it goes. Half the time it's like the joke is just, you know, the sketch we watched earlier that I wrote, the narrator starts talking and I just look up at the ceiling like, what? Where is this coming from? You know, and it's like, you don't have to say anything. So yeah, I'm curious if you can go a little bit more on exercises that kind of helped you find the emotion, or exercises that helped you focus on something other than what am I going to say?
Other than what I'm going to say? I mean, there's sometimes you do scenes without any talking at all. I think when you're very early in improv, you want to like fill the silence and you want to constantly be saying stuff. So sometimes teachers like, okay, well, you're not allowed to say anything for the first whole minute, or like the whole first 2 minutes. You just be there with each other and you kind of feel out what the situation is there, and then you can talk. So it's kind of exercise like that. Yeah, the Numbers one is a good one. I'm trying to think. What is another one without too many words? It's hard to think off the top of my head.
Okay, here's a one that helped restrict me. And I actually do this with my coaching sometimes. And I would actually, one, as I said earlier, audience, if you're learning how to do this, it's good to learn with other people, right? So keep in mind, a lot of these are better with a partner. One very helpful exercise I learned in improv was called back to back. And it's a game. It's an exercise. We never did it for an audience, but it's 2 improvisers sitting there facing in opposite directions, so you cannot see each other. And there's a moderator who's like moderating the scene, and you're only allowed 1 sentence at a time. And there's like a 15-second gap in between each line. And the moderator says, okay, Chris, go. And I get 1 line and I say it, and then we sit there for 15 seconds of silence. And you do not give the next line until the moderator goes, okay, Maiva, go. And again, this theme of like the limitations actually are what create the fun and where the creativity comes from. But yeah, when you have to sit there and you have to think of every sentence individually and you have to sit there and like reflect on it, you become much more intentional with your words.
That finally, I thought of a game. You made me think of it with that game, which is similar. You basically have to talk about a subject, any subject that the audience gives you, and it could be total nonsense, but you can't repeat any words, and you can't hesitate. but then you end up speaking really slowly. So if you say you're an expert on oranges, the fruit, and I can't hesitate and I can't repeat any words, I have to speak very slowly in order not to hesitate. Oranges are a great fruit. So, that also adds a lot of restriction and just making you really think while also moving fast and focusing a lot less. It's somehow you're focusing a lot less on what you're going to say in the sense of, is it smart and is it funny, but more just, can I get words to come out of my mouth without hesitating?
Yeah, well, here I like. So Mary put this up here. So this is an exercise that I believe Viola Spolin was the first one to really teach mirroring as like a theater exercise. But the mirroring is a classic example of an exercise where you don't have time to think. The idea is you have two players, and it is just like what it sounds like. You pretend like you're on opposite sides of the mirror, and whatever your partner does, you try to match them exactly. You try to match the face, you try to match the movements. And again, you literally every single moment you are just following what they're doing. So you don't have time to second guess yourself, And I was on a podcast recently and we were talking about intuition, and someone was like, how do you practice that? I'm like, yeah, improv is literally, that's the practice of like, how do you go out there and shut off your brain to where you're running on pure intuition? And yeah, mirroring is a classic example of like, there is literally no time to think.
You.
Oh no. Okay. Am I back?
No, yeah, you're back. You're back. Okay. I lost you for a second. I don't know if everybody else did.
No, I did. I was just finishing off the thought saying, yeah, mirroring is just a classic example of no time to think, no time to plan on what you're going to be doing. Yeah. You're 100% focused on your partner, and that is literally the only thing you can do.
Yeah. No, it's really important to have those moments, not just for improv, but just kind of turn your brain off every once in a while. Just be in the moment. Yeah.
Well, here, I want to talk about this idea a little bit. So Lynn said something very flattering, so thank you. She said, you do looks well. This was something I learned. I had a lot of coaching early on from a friend of mine who's a very successful content creator, and he really did harp on the note that like, hey, you can do a lot with just your face, so the camera picks up a lot of subtlety around here, but improv really kind of taught me what I am as a comic performer. I'm not the I don't really have a cynical style to comedy. I tried that in my 20s a lot. I was a lot more cynical and sarcastic, and it just never really fit me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I'm an emotional person, and I want to be friends with everybody. And like, that's just kind of like comes out. And I found I'm a reactive person. I've got big eyes. So if my eyes are welling up like I'm going to cry, that's funny because the audience could see like, oh, look at him suffer. But similarly, when I was doing short form improv, I was whenever we would have a guessing game, which is like a game where like, you have to like guess something and it's kind of like charades. Your fellow players are like acting it out or miming it out. I was always the guesser because the audience would want to see me try to figure it out and get exasperated and be like, ah! And then, when I would get it, I'd get super excited. My eyes would light up. What did you learn about yourself as a comic performer? Like, did you learn new things about yourself that are funny?
So I don't know if I learned it in that sense. I did learn as a comic performer because something about myself. So when we started doing game or having this unusual perspective, there's always got to be somebody who has the normal perspective and who's also just kind of like grounding the scene, making the other person look even funnier. So it's just like, why do you think this doesn't make any sense? So I've tried to be the kind of big characters and like really hilarious and I don't know, funny voices, and I just never really fit so well into that. And I've learned that I'm really good at grounding scenes and making them feel more realistic. So like in The Onion, for example, they started doing videos and TV. And I in Scott Dicker's book, I think it's How to Write Funny is his book, but he talks about the way to make it really, really funny is to make it feel like it's real. So when they were doing their satire newscasting, they would hire real anchors to report the fake news to make it funnier because they have the voice and they feel really serious. And people are kind of like, wait, what? So I've learned about myself that I'm much better at being that kind of realistic person in a silly scene and grounding the scene and making it feel like real life rather than being an outlandish, big, funny character, which was something I had tried, but it didn't really work out.
I feel like 100% the same way, you know, and
Yeah?
that was, well, yeah, I was always in groups where they were playing bigger, crazier characters than me, you know, and so I would just kind of be like an everyman, you know, and I really thought that just meant I wasn't funny. You know, and now it's like the more I write comedy, the more I do it, the more it's become like this indispensable part of my brand and my company and my content. The more I've learned that no, actually, comedy is an equation. It's a formula that's been around forever. And it's two opposing ideas playing off of each other,
Yeah.
you know, and if I'm in a scene with a big crazy character, or now I have to play the big crazy character because I'm a one-man show, you know, but it's like if you cut back to a version of me that is 100% genuine, that is responding in the way I would actually respond, it gives me license to amp up the craziness of the absurd situation. And like the more those conflict with each other, the more realistic I am here, the funnier it is when it hits up against this absurdity, you know? So it's like, yeah, whenever people tell me, oh, I'm not funny, I'm like, actually, you're the straight man, you know, or you're the straight woman. Actually, if we throw you into an absurd situation and you just sit there and react like a regular person, that's hilarious.
It's funny. You need that to make it even funnier.
Yeah.
Because if you just have two really absurd people in a scene, then it's just kind of like, what is happening here? I mean, even if you watch Key and Peele, most of the time, one of them is a crazy person and the other one is just like, what? It's like a good, comedy duo. You always need that somebody reacting to the thing, and that person reacting can be also really funny.
Yeah, and so I learned sketch comedy at Chicago's Second City, and you know, there's only a handful of different types of scenes they do. They've got like 10 different scene structures, and that's what you learn when you learn to write there. But they had one is called Fish Out of Water, and the other is called Center and Concentric, and they are just the exact opposites. Fish Out of Water is you take like a really normal character and you throw them in a crazy situation and just see what happens. Or you take a really crazy character and you just throw them into a normal situation, you know, and you just let them both do, you find their rational motivation and you both just play it as rationally as possible. And again, we don't know what's going to happen, but we just know it's going to be funny as long as everybody plays it honestly.
Yeah. What are those two both Fish Out of Water, or what was the concentric
The
one?
Center and Concentric, I think I get them confused sometimes. I think the Center and Concentric is like you're the centered person and you're going into a crazy situation.
Okay.
You know, I always looked at it as like, we always talk, the joke in my improv troupe was we talked about centaurs a lot. We talked about like, if you just walk into an office scene, it's just a boring, it's a boring office scene, but you're just a centaur. You know, you're half man, half horse, you know, and you just come in and like stamp your hoof and like, you know, read like the latest
memos, please.
Yeah, it's like it'll just work. It'll just something will happen there. And for me, it's like I have different characters that because I have sketch comedy now and I have recurring characters that my audience wants to see. And it's like, yeah, when I write those scenes, like I have a character named Vague Man, who, if the audience has ever seen any of my bits as Vague Man, you know, that's an old improv reference. My improv group used to be, if you got 3 lines into the scene and you didn't have a relationship, you didn't have a character, you didn't have a point of view, they would freeze the scene. They go, stop, Vague Man, where are you? Who are you? Why are you doing this? Why do I care? Continue. So yeah, Vagueman is like, he's my superhero character. Vague Maiva, or whatever woman was Maiva's character. We did a sketch together for the promo for this show. But you know, his thing is like, he never says anything specific. He's always trying to say the safest, most corporate friendly thing he can. And he's infuriatingly vague, you know? But as long as I walk into a situation and I am just saying the vaguest things possible, if you run into anything, it's just, like, you can just create comedy out of it. And, you know, for the sake of our bit, it was like, you know, it was just the opposite of that. Instead, it was just like, okay, just take this energy on, you know, Maiva, go out there and play the vaguest version of you that you can. And like, I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but it turned out so funny.
I loved it. You know what's funny about Vague Man? Now that you mentioned the story behind it, that it came from them basically saying you're being too vague. This is not good for your improv scene. But actually, it applies so well to B2B because you're also because everybody on LinkedIn is so vague and nobody's specific and they're just saying really generic things. Because that's always where I thought that Vague Man was coming from. I thought it was a satire on B2B content, but now you're saying it came from.
Well, that's what it is. Yeah, it started as an improv thing. He was a one-off character in a bit about specificity, and I thought he was good. I thought it was a one-time thing, and everybody was like, "You have to bring back this character." And he's become a really kind of useful way to satirize a lot of what I don't like about content in the B2B world. But yeah, I tell that to content creators too. I see all the time these low-performing videos where somebody's like, "Here's my 3 tips about marketing." Blah, 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 blah. And I tell them, I'm like, okay, no one goes to their computer and is like, I just need 3 marketing tips. You know?
It's the last 3 that are going to help me.
You know, why are you giving them these marketing tips? You know, if you start the video and you're like, here's something I blew $10,000 on when I started marketing. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like you're bringing this information to them because of how you feel about them, because what your perspective is as a person, you know, and also like the journey you want to take them on. So I'm like, hey, those are 3 perfectly good points. The audience has to know that this is for them.
Yeah.
You know, how can we illustrate that to them within 3 seconds? Because that's how long you have to stop the scroll. If you don't get someone to sit down and engage with your video for a full 3 seconds, it does not count, you know? So it's like, it sounds hard when you're starting out. But again, when you have that clear point of view, you just kind of start from there and everything gets easier. I love your cat so much.
Paw off my leg.
Maiva, I could sit here and talk improv with you all day long, but unfortunately, we're out of time today. So everybody, thank you very much for coming to this episode of Chris Sells His Soul. Let's just wrap this up with Maiva. Could you tell the audience one more time if they want to check out Flying Cat Marketing, or if they want to go check out your new SEO ROI calculator, where can my audience find you for more, Maiva?
Yes, so www.flyingcatmarketing.com. You can also get the SEO ROI calculator there, and then connect with me on LinkedIn. Just Maiva Everywhere is my handle everywhere. So you can find me there. Well, basically just LinkedIn is probably the most interesting one. And then, LinkedIn and the website. I am there every single day.
Yeah, and Maiva, for anybody who doesn't know, if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, Maiva spelled Maeva.
Yes.
So find Maiva on LinkedIn. I also want to give another big thank you to today's sponsors, Enable Minutes and Allego. So Enable Minutes, once again, if you are not following them, you are missing out. They are tracking down all the cool people on LinkedIn and getting their best information out there in these super short videos. They've got some really amazing stuff coming up about mental health and kind of the emotional tolls of sales. So please check out Enable Minutes, scan that QR code on the screen. And I am Chris Bogue. So you can also check me out. Again, I've got 2 cohorts starting up soon. If you want to get in on that, you will learn video. We will learn together. It's a super fun time. And if you want to check out other episodes of Chris Sells His Soul, check me out wherever you listen to podcasts. So we've got all the episodes on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. Check it out for more great conversations on how to monetize creativity. And this has been Chris Sells His Soul. Say bye, Maeva.
Bye.
Oh, I finally screwed up your name right at the very end.